Okay, let's go.
He wants to jump
1,000 cars. Sir, you have 1,000 cars.
I don't think I'd attempt to try this stunt.
Or we owe this horsepower to Uncle Sam.
Too many cars.
Car. Roses would be...
Like I put my beer belly on it.
If you can't immediately tell somebody how many cars you have.
You'll really give those uppity yuppies something to think about.
Stay on the bar. Don't go off the bar with your Bronco.
1980 Volvo horns, what's right?
Yeah.
I want a man's coolant.
And he's like, oh, I thought it'd be small. It's for a small car. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still an automatic transmission. They're never going to be light.
It's definitely going to have to crash.
Starting off with Brad buying another car.
That's the West. Internet.
Is this a Nigerian oil print?
I also wish you drove a tan Camry.
Anyways,
Anyway,
that's a
horrible,
very
horrible podcast content.
very
Talking about a picture.
inside joke.
It loves to be driven hard.
Welcome to another episode of Auto Off Topic. Hello, Brad.
Evening, Andrew.
Good evening. It's not bad. It's not bad.
I have a feeling today's going to be a way off topic episode because neither of us have done car stuff for a week.
No, it's just that time of year. It's been
Emphasis on off topic.
The cold. Yeah, the cold has been unrelenting here, and the weather is not great. Like a lot of snow. I mean, it's good if you like snow, which I kind of do because I ski. But to do anything else, not possible.
Well, it's not snowing here to make this a weather off topic episode, but it is. It is raining here, and it hasn't rained here measurably in probably 8 months. So it's good. We needed some rain.
Wild.
Yeah, well, it's been a weird winter. So it's not really a concern because we get all of our water from up north in the mountains, and it's been raining and snowing plenty up there. So when it's dry here in the actual valley itself, it doesn't actually become too much of a concern, but it's nice to occasionally have some weather. Breaks up the monotony of sun, I guess, which I shouldn't complain about because that's why I moved here, right? But it was overcast and
Exactly
65 all day, so it was a good rainy day.
No, I'm so sad for you.
No, it's good. I enjoyed it. It didn't ruin any of my plans. It did, however, change the date for the Concourse in the Hills in Fountain Hills, Arizona. That was supposed to be this weekend. And that's not a traditional concourse event. It's a car show with everything at it. And I do enjoy that show because it's free to spectate. But it's on like rolling hills along the Fountain Hills on a reservoir or lake or whatever it is. And because it hasn't rained here in so long, and now it's raining 2 days before the show, and all the rolling hills are grass, the town doesn't want cars tearing up the lawn. So unfortunately, they postponed that big show until April, which is annoying for people who come out of town for it, because a lot of people bring cars from out of town to go to that show. But what has happened is a bunch of small pop-up events have been created in its place. So there's plenty to do this weekend, car related, even though that particular event was canceled, and the weather should be perfect on Saturday. So I know I personally will be going to the Italian Design and Racing Open House / Cars and Coffee. But there's like 4 other Cars and Coffees. There's the Martin Museum Cars and Coffee, the Penske Museum Cars and Coffee. There's the regular stuff at 4 till 4. There's an air-cooled show. There's a ton of stuff going on this weekend. So if you're in Phoenix and you listen to this before the weekend, those are your plans.
Yeah, speaking of that, Martin reminded me of the Martin flying boat that landed in Lake Pleasant.
Yeah,
this week.
Yeah, very cool.
Kind of random.
I wish I knew that was happening before it happened, so I could have seen it land.
Yeah, we talked about one of the times I visited. We went to the Pima Air Museum, but that's in Tucson. So this airplane is going to that museum, but it's such a massive flying boat. It has no landing gear. It has to land on water. And apparently there isn't a body of water big enough for it, I guess, in Tucson, or that they could get it out of in Tucson. So it had to land in Lake Pleasant, and then it's going to be trucked down to Tucson, which seems wild. So you can probably take a ride up there and just see it in dry dock, because they're going to be disassembling it.
Yeah, if
for,
it's,
I'm sure a few days.
I'm sure it'll still be there on Saturday, and I was going to try to see if I could sneak over there at some point on Saturday to take a look at it. Part of the reason they use Lake Pleasant is because it has a 10-lane wide boat ramp, so they can get gigantic things.
That blew my mind.
Yeah, they can get gigantic things up it. So it's weird because it's only like 25 minutes from the house. It's not far. You actually came out here and went on a evening like booze cruise on that lake not that long, a couple years ago. And so you've seen the lake. You've seen it's not like compared to like Winnipesaukee, it's not a big lake, but for Arizona, it's a good sized lake. So
pretty big.
Yeah, I forget how big it is, but it's definitely a good sized lake for here, that's for sure. But they do a lot of boating, and it is a swimmable lake as well. So it's our local water recreation area in the desert. Not a mirage, promise.
Yeah.
But what is the name of that?
That's why you have the most. It's the Philippine Mars.
Mars, that's what it is.
So, yeah, it's a Martin Mars. So they're all usually named something Mars. I think there was 40 of them built during World War II. They're heavy transport, and they used them to fly from San Francisco to Hawaii and out into the Pacific. And that's why they have different names. Like there's a museum that it belonged to in British Columbia, and they took in a flying boat called the Hawaii Mars, so a sister plane to it, that was still in. So after World War II or into the 60s, they were retired, and then they were bought by logging companies in British Columbia, and they're converted to water bombers for firefighting. So the Hawaii Mars is still painted it looks like Marlboro colors, basically, the red and white. And that was retired, and it went to this museum in British Columbia, and that was still flying. And I guess they had to do an engine swap because they wanted to the Hawaii Mars was still flyable, so they flew it to the museum, decommissioned it, took out its working engines, swapped them over into this Philippine Mars because it wasn't flyable, made that flyable, and then it's going down to the Pima Air Museum. It's kind of a interesting thing.
Yeah, it's very cool.
These planes are like 90 years old,
yeah,
which is also crazy.
No, it's super cool. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like it's almost a shame that it won't be flown again, but also the undertaking to keep that thing air safe is probably massive.
That's the problem. Yeah. But the thing is, it's not being scrapped. At least it's going to the museum.
Right.
That's the consolation. You can go see it.
Yeah, for sure. And once they get it on there on display, come out here, take a visit. We'll take a ride down there again, because even though I didn't get to see it fly in, which I would have liked to have, it's cool that it will still be able to go look at.
There's a bunch of stuff down there, and like when we went there, they had just taken in retirement the blanking on the name of it. It's the 747 it was a shortened 747, and it had a telescope on it. SOFIA is it stands for something, is an acronym, but it was a NASA plane, and because of the new space telescope, which I forget the name of, not the Hubble. What was the other? There's a new one.
Well, SOFIA is stratospheric.
That takes higher resolution pictures.
Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy.
Yeah. So they would fly up high because the atmosphere is thinner, so you get less distortion. But because they put the new telescope in space, they retired this plane. But anyway, it was there being decommissioned when we first went. And now I saw an Instagram post from the Pima Air Museum that is open for tours. So you can actually go up inside of it.
That's very cool. Yeah, I remember because it had a huge garage door on the side of it that opened in mid-flight.
Yep.
Take photos with, which is an absolutely wild thought.
I'm not like super. I'm like casually into planes. I learned later that it's not as long as a normal 747. It's actually shortened, like literally like a short wheelbase 747.
Okay.
And people are like, yeah, it had like the same power as a regular 747, but a shorter fuselage, so it like handled really well.
So it's a sporty shorty.
Apparently a sports model.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird, but
it needs to not have a sunroof
stuff's
to be
cool.
a perfect, slick top as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
So people, the car nerds, will love it.
But yeah. So there we go. First off topic right there.
Yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, it's going to sit there hopefully a couple more days at least. So I'll try to swing over there this weekend. The Lake Pleasant is like not a national park; it's a state park. I think it's like $8 to go through the gate, but whatever. Probably worth it.
Mm-hmm. So you got a nice weekend planned. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else. I haven't done much to cars. I've got projects coming up. I still haven't gotten to the machine shop to pick up my engine. I've got like every car is a project car in a long enough timeline, right? So
100%.
Stephanie's car is coming up for an oil change. My Volkswagen's coming up for an oil change. Last time I had it done, I love taking it Autobahn because I like not dealing with the oil part of it. I think unfortunately I'm going to have to start doing the oil change myself. But the last time I looked it over, because the car's not on a warranty anymore. Can you believe that car is 5 years old?
Yeah,
and I've got
time flies.
Almost 55,000 miles on it. So the last time I was there, they were like, it kind of needs rear brakes. And I was like, does it? Okay. So it definitely needed front brakes because they're like grindy and they've got grooves in the rotors and they were definitely like warped. They don't seem warped now, but it's weird. The rotors look like crap. The pads are pretty thick, but they're like it needs rear brakes. I'm like, okay. So I just looked at them again. I'm like, I don't think they're that worn, and they don't really get worn. They don't get used that much, but I'm definitely not going to have them do the rear brakes because what do you think they quoted me for rear brakes?
Oh my God, probably $600.
$1,200.
Oh my goodness.
One axle, rear brakes.
That's wild.
Yeah. I was like, no.
Yeah, that's where where
it's worth my trouble.
Yeah, the intersection of what's my time worth is well under that number. So
yeah, I can do
for half of that.
Like
I wouldn't have paid.
No, yeah, because I went on FCP Euro, and I was like, okay, cool. I can get lifetime warranty on these brakes parts, basically, because you just got to send back the old ones after you buy the new ones, and they'll credit you. That's how that works. And I think they're banking on people just not doing it, but like a Zimmerman brake kit, front and rear, $300
for all four with rotors.
Pads and rotors.
Yeah, that's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah. So I'll just do that, and I'll do a 4-wheel brake job because I feel like the front's really needed anyway.
Do you need to have
the pads aren't worn out?
Do you need to have the VAGCOM for the electronic rear parking brake?
I will. No, it does not have electronic rear parking brake. It's a handle.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll double check the service manual first make sure there's nothing I'm missing, but it should be pretty standard brake setup. And yeah, I gotta do that pretty soon, but otherwise that car's fine. So
I haven't worked on anything, but the only update I have is I've been looking for a while for a set of original style mini lights in a 4 and 114.3 bolt pattern. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with the original style mini light, but the original style mini light has a flat pad where the bolt pattern goes, and there's almost like a ring around it to the spokes. And only the original style, like 60s, 70s mini lights have that. The later ones get rid of that ring and the spokes flow into the flat pad. kind of hard to explain. I like that look. It makes the spokes shorter, and it's what all of the Trans Am cars ran in the 60s and 70s. So it's an authentic looking wheel if you want to have that look. So I have been looking for a set of those wheels in a 14-inch for a very long time. A friend of mine down in Tucson who has a Colt and a Sapporo and some other Brad-like cars came across a set and put them on his Sapporo. And I was like, oh, I want to buy your wheels. And he said no. And then I was mad at him, and we're not friends anymore. No. So earlier this week, he sends a message linking me to a set of similar wheels in a very clean, polished looking condition up here in Phoenix. Actually, not down near where he lives, which is good because he's 2 hours away. So I decided it would behoove me to go look at them. So I did. They were advertised as 14 by 6. I think they're a little bit wider. They might be a 14 by 6.5. They're not 14 by 7, but nonetheless, I already know how wide they are because I did go and pick them up. So I now have a set of the early style mini lights that I've been looking for quite some time. So pretty happy about that. It was
That's cool.
Yeah, it was neat too because I go to this guy's house, which, car people, right? You just walk into some random person's backyard and hope they don't kill you.
Yep.
So that's what I did. But it was, he's kind of like, yeah, I'll be in the backyard working on stuff. Just come on through the fence, which is always sketchy. But nonetheless, once I established that he did in fact live in the house and wasn't stealing the wheels, I talked to him for a bit about his stash of cars in the backyard. He's basically exactly how I am, but has more space than I do, so he's worse off than me.
Oh.
Yeah. He is building a garage as well. He has a 2-car attached, and he's building a 40 by 40 or something in the backyard of his house.
Ooh.
So yeah, he had a bunch of cool stuff. He had an early 70s 911, a bunch of random muscle car era stuff, a couple Barracudas, a Camaro, a Mustang, a couple Falcons. So definitely the kind of guy that we would definitely get along with. The wheels were on a early 240Z car that he picked up out of California. Yeah, we're friends now. Absolutely. He picked a Z car up out of California, and he's doing a full factory style restoration on it. So all the aftermarket stuff he was getting rid of, which is these wheels. So that was an exciting find to have local, and I paid $200 for a set of wheels, which I will take all day long, especially wheels that I want.
Oh yeah,
they'll require some cleaning, obviously, but overall they're in good shape.
You picked them up in the truck?
Of course, I do truck stuff with my truck. There's no other vehicle I could have put 14 by 6.5 inch alloys in. But I did. He lives about 40 minutes away, maybe 30 minutes away. So it was definitely another good stretch for the truck, but it did well. And he had a pristine, clean concrete driveway, and I was confident in parking the truck in there without it leaking fluids all over it. So that was good too.
Nice. All right. So through the magic of the internet, that finishes the first half of this recording that we started last week and then had a internet failure.
Whoops.
So that's fun. Yeah. We were going to talk about the Honda and Nissan merger because last week it fell apart.
But now it's old news.
Yeah, it's old news now, but basically the gist of it was that Nissan wanted a full equal partnership, and Honda was like, we're going to make you a subsidiary.
Yeah. Honda was like, we're better than you, so...
Yeah. And then Mitsubishi would have been like the stepchild.
I mean, they would have been
I don't
like...
know what Mitsubishi's going to do.
The stepchild step. They would have been like They were a stepchild from the first merger. They'd have been like stepchild times 2 of this thing.
Yeah.
The kid nobody wants.
It's so funny whenever you read a news article. It's like I know the picture has all three CEOs in it, but they crop it so it's just Honda
Yeah.
and Nissan.
Yeah, real shitty, you guys. Crop me out of this picture.
Yeah. So that's not gone well, and I don't know what. People are like, don't really know what's going to happen because Honda and Nissan have not been doing well. I guess now they're talking about just not merging, but sharing some technology instead.
Honda and Nissan haven't been doing well, or just Nissan?
So we'll see how that works out, I guess. I don't think Honda's been doing that well either, because that's why they were going to merge.
I thought it was more a Hail Mary to save Honda, to save Nissan, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess Hondas have just been Hondaing, but I mean, there isn't like, I guess the thing is like Honda doesn't really have any EVs. I guess that's the problem.
They don't. All their EVs are
'Cause they aren't
GMs.
Yeah. That's the issue. And then, so Nissan had some EV tech that I think they wanted.
And Honda
Even
had some
Mitsubishi had a little
reputation that they wanted, but Nissan Honda was like, nope, sorry.
Yeah,
can't have that,
exactly.
Nissan.
Yeah. Because basically, Toyota's eating their lunch. So
yeah, Toyota is doing quite well right now. So
oh yeah, that was the other thing I read. I think combined, so Nissan has what, the Titan and the Frontier, and the combined truck sales for both of those, like last year or something, were like 80,000 units or 85,000,
which is like 1 month
Not a
of
lot of
F-150s.
Yeah, or like, whatever Toyota sells in trucks, because I think Toyota's what, third or fourth.
If you
Typically, it's usually like Ford, Chevy, Dodge, and then maybe Dodge and Toyota are like kind of trade off. I think I could be wrong.
I don't know. I know Toyota's having some bad luck right now with their Toyota engines. So, yeah, they sell 59,000 F-150s every month. So, it's a lot more than a Nissan.
Yeah, F-Series forever, top selling truck in the United States.
Yep. Thanks to a lot of fleets and a lot of companies, they just use them because they know they're going to work.
Yeah, just ubiquitous. It's a truck.
There's one parked across the street from me every day because it's his company truck and is all lettered up, and he drives to the job site with it. So gets a new one every 2 years.
All right, here you go. This is from Statistica.com. Best-selling pickup trucks in the United States in 2024. Ford F-Series, no surprise. 732,000 vehicles. Next up, Silverado. Also not a surprise, but still almost 200,000 less. 542,000. And then, wow, that's a pretty interesting spread. And then 200,000 less than that is a Ram. 373,000. And then nearly tied with the GMC Sierra, which is just a Silverado. But there's less GMC dealers than Chevys.
Except a friend of ours podcast was talking the other day. They have a trivia at the end of every podcast, the boys over at DWA.
Yep.
And their trivia question a couple weeks ago was, what is the highest lemon lawed vehicle in the States last year? And surprisingly,
Ford F-150?
No, it was the GMC Sierra, not the Chevy, by a long shot. The Chevy wasn't even in the top 10.
Weird.
Yeah. So the thought process...
Literally a badge job.
So the thought process is it's like a more luxurious Silverado. So maybe like all of the extra options are what caused the problems.
Yeah. I don't know why you'd buy a GMC over a Chevy, because you can get basically the same options and pay a little bit less or as much. I don't know. New trucks are very expensive.
Yeah. No
one last stat. So not the Tundra, the Tacoma comes in 5th at 190,000 trucks. So,
and I think 180,000 of them are here in Phoenix.
Yeah. So the two trucks that Nissan makes combined still sold 100,000 less units than a Toyota Tacoma. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And that's with a brand new truck from Nissan too. It's the redesign, whole new truck came out last year. So before that, it was the same as
That
like
was a rental. Drove pretty nice.
the 98.
But yeah. So that's like really the only car news. So we got frustrated with the podcast because it wasn't working. The internet crashed. And then I guess we might as well talk about NASCAR, right? I mean, it's NASCAR season.
Yeah, we can go into a short little dissertation about the duels and the 500.
Yeah, so we got to watch the duels. I think we were talking about real quickly about cord cutting and all the different apps. And this year, NASCAR is going to be in a bunch of different apps. So I actually had cut the cord last week. I was finally tired of paying too much for cable, like 99% of the time, we're not watching a cable based program. It's on an app anyways. So why were we buying cable? Excuse me. Anyways, I switched to. We were concerned about like having DVR and stuff, and like being able to catch up with things. Trying out YouTube TV seems to work pretty well for live sports. I watched the NASCAR races on there. I was able to use the cloud DVR and start not live and catch up. So it worked pretty well.
Can you fast forward through commercials?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good.
If you're not live.
I mean, yeah, you couldn't.
Yeah.
How could you go into the future?
Yep. It's just like a regular DVR and a cable box, which I think we're cloud based anyways these days.
Well, I was just nervous with a lot of the streaming services. You can't fast forward through commercials. So I didn't know if YouTube Premium also had that issue or YouTube TV, had that issue where you couldn't fast forward through the commercials. Because obviously that's all I want to do is fast forward through commercials.
Yeah. So that was my solution. I'm going to try that out and hopefully it works out for me. So far so good with being able to watch it.
Well,
so anyway,
I certainly will be willing to try something maybe in the future because I was super frustrated we'll fast forward a little bit to the race on Sunday because it was rain delayed by a ton. So I missed the end of the race, even though I put a huge, I added 3 hours to the recording, and then I recorded the show that was going to come on afterwards, and added 3 hours to that, and I still missed the last, after that last red flag in the race, I missed the end of the race. So super annoying. I found it on YouTube, but then of course searching for the final 5 laps of the race, you find out who won the race. So no more surprise.
Yep. So the first duel. So the duels are after we probably talked about it last year. I went to the duels last year because I was worried because it was going to rain heavily on Sunday of 2024. And it was a pretty good chance that they were going to postpone the race, and I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to stay and see it. And I was like, "Oh my god, we didn't come all the way to Florida with my in-laws who like NASCAR to not see some super speedway racing." So I panic bought tickets to the duels last year, and we went and watched the duels, which was cool anyways. I'm glad we did. But basically how it works, there was qualifying, and they set the pole sitter, and I believe that's it. Qualifying, that's the only way that the running order is set is through is to get the pole, and then they use the duels to set the remainder of the pole, the remainder of the running order. So
other than
finishing order,
the original qualifying is also used to get 2 provisional non-chartered drivers in as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But not set their starting grid position.
No, it's interesting that there is some similarities to the Daytona 500 and the Indy 500 where they allow it to be a sort of open race where drivers who are non-series regulars can be allowed to try out and to race their way in, quote unquote, to the Daytona 500 by setting a good qualifying time. So that's kind of interesting. That's still they've kept those traditions alive in these races.
In NASCAR, though, you need to have experience in the car. Whereas in Indy, they're seems to be a little more open because Kyle Larson had never driven a Indy car before.
Yes, but they're talking about too that for this year they have changed those rules and added the provisional spot, and that's what allowed Helio Castroneves the provisional spot to get into the Daytona 500.
But they wouldn't let Mike Wallace in, who's a former NASCAR driver.
He hadn't had enough experience in racing in the recent years, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Or in a next gen car. So that's I don't know. So all right, the first duel, which is like they split the field, so it's like 20 cars, 22.
Yeah, 23 cars per race.
It was pretty funny because, my gosh, who was the pole sitter? Was it Truex?
I don't remember who sat on the pole. No,
It was a Toyota.
Okay, might have been Truex, but I don't remember who it was. I'm terrible with, as you should know by now, I'm terrible remembering names 10 minutes after the race ends of who was where. You're lucky I remember who won the races. I don't remember who sat on the pole for the duel. It was the fastest Toyota in qualifying, right?
Chase Briscoe.
I was going to say, that would have made it Briscoe.
But Chase Briscoe driving Truex's old car?
Yeah.
Or not? Yeah. Yeah, because it was the first time Toyota had gotten a pole, or been a while. I don't know. That's why we're casual motorsports enjoyers. Because I don't keep all these facts in my head.
Yeah,
I just can't.
You want actual information? Go listen to somebody else.
Yeah, I'm into it at the time, and I know what's going on. I just can't. I don't commit all this stuff.
My
stuff going on.
My issue is the way my brain works. I can't remember names. So I remember I can picture the whole race. I can picture the car sitting there. I couldn't tell you who was driving it.
I don't know where my son gets it. He's really good with remembering people's names and the numbers on the cars with the names. Like really good at it.
Yeah, numbers?
Like shocking because I'm not good at it.
So I also think that in the past, like when I was, younger, single digit age.
When the numbers stayed the same?
Not even that. Not even they stayed the same, but I remember being a young NASCAR fan and same thing. I could tell you numbers and names and everything easily. So who knows? I can still sit here and tell you who drove the 18 car back in 1993, Bobby Labonte. Like Terry Labonte was number 5. Kellogg's car. Like it's all committed in memory, but the new stuff is less so. Maybe because as an adult, there's so much more stuff in your brain.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, it was funny because in the first duel, Chase Briscoe's out there, and he had to start, I think, on the front row, and then just immediately shuffle to the back because, you've got the pole sitting car, you don't want to wreck it, you don't want to have it wrecked. So it was just funny that he just kind of dropped behind the pack, like 5 or 6 car lengths, and I think had to do a certain amount of laps for it to be like an official appearance, and then he just went behind the wall.
Yeah, might as well at that point. No reason not to.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't need to win the duel race; he's already on the pole.
And Hamlin was
the winner of the.
Hamlin was talking in his podcast about how the cars now, like it used to be that the duels were used for car setup for the race, but like the cars are so cookie cutter now that they don't even worry about that as much. So like his car wouldn't have needed to run as many laps at speed anyway to make sure that it was ready for the race because they're pretty sure he already would have been. So they just drop back and drop out. Don't ruin a good thing.
Yeah, it's cool to win the duel, and it was cool to see Bubba win the first one. And that was a good race. Like that was a really entertaining duel race. The second one is where it gets really interesting and weird. And I don't think we talked about it. Is it the Caution finish rule. What was the name of that rule?
Race to the yellow, or race to the
race
finish.
to the yellow rule.
Yeah, it's
Race to the finish.
it's race to the checker or time of caution.
Time of caution. That's what it is.
Yep. So here's the deal, and I've done a lot more looking into this and reading about this and trying to figure out what the deal is.
Yep.
The time of
Would
caution.
you explain what happened first?
So what happened is there was a crash in the last lap, and they flew the caution flag. When the caution light comes on, the race ends, and whoever's leading the race.
So the crash happened at Daytona. The crash happened basically between turn 4 and the tri-oval, in like the restart zone you would see on TV. And Eric Jones and Austin Cindric were challenging each other for the lead, and the crash happened behind those two cars. And they raced to the finish, and it was by like thousandths of a second that Eric Jones was across the finish line first,
and thought he won.
There was a ton of confusion. Yes. And why did he not win, Brad?
He did not win because they went back on the tape, and the rule is that the race is over when the yellow flag comes out. When the yellow light comes on, the yellow flag comes out. So they have a camera timed with the front cars and the yellow flag on the yellow flag, the yellow light in the wall, and the yellow light comes on, and that ends the race. And Eric Jones was in second position at that time, behind Cindric. Was it Cindric? Who won the second duel?
Yes.
Cindric. So at the time, you're like, oh, that's annoying because they should give it to Eric Jones. But also, what I've done some digging and research into is this rule's existed since like 2003. So it's not a new rule.
Yep.
And the reason it exists is because they don't want people at the back of the pack racing through a crash zone. You crash your car at the front of the pack and you're sideways across the middle of the track. They throw the yellow. Everybody has to hit the brakes because they don't want people in the back of the pack coming around the corner and actively racing and coming at you, sitting still on the track at 189 miles an hour. That's how the thought process goes. The controversy comes when they say, well, it was at the finish line, let them race to the finish. But how do you establish who, where, and what can continue to race and who, where, and what can't? That's the problem. That's why they did the overtime rule a few years ago, so that if a crash like this happens and there's a few laps left, they'll go to overtime instead of just ending the race under caution, because that's boring and nobody wants to watch that. That's why
they had too many races that ended under caution.
Yeah, exactly. And all of those races ended with whoever was leading when the light came on is who won the race. So they added that overtime rule because there was so much of that happening, but they didn't want to eliminate this rule because they didn't want to make it more dangerous for the drivers. So the question now becomes, should they have let them race to the finish, or should they have not and then thrown the yellow flag when the first car hit the finish line? But again, that would set a precedent that they wouldn't want to have set. That being said, the precedent has now been set because they changed it on Sunday night.
Exactly. And they had done other races differently before, like in recent memory.
Yeah, there were a couple of other things I saw that a lot of it depended on where cars were on the track at the time of the incident, how much of a spread there was in the cars, what are the chances of a vehicle being run over by another car, and a lot of the argument here is that they were coming into the tri-oval, cars were heading to the finish line, they wouldn't have come around another 2.5 miles at speed.
They wouldn't during the duel either. There was even less cars on the track.
But that's what I'm saying. During the duel, they wouldn't have done it. So why did they throw the yellow? So
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's just like any sporting event. There's going to be referee calls you don't agree with, right? And I think that's kind of what we have to deal with here.
I mean, last year they wrecked in the tri-oval on the last lap across the finish line. So
last year it was even closer to the
who
start
was
finish
out in front?
But last year it was even closer to the start finish line, and the yellow flag didn't come out as quickly. The yellow flag last year didn't come out until after the cars crossed the finish line.
So,
but that was just by chance.
Like,
that wasn't on purpose.
And like, possibly last year had they used this rule, it might have been like Chastain might have been the winner because
except
out front.
Last year the wreck happened like within feet of the finish line, and there wouldn't have even been time to throw the yellow. But before they realized what was going on, the race was over. This year it was back, another quarter straightaway.
I understand why they do it, but it's like it's a really hard thing to call.
Yeah, and that's why I'm making the same comparison to like, a football game, right? If your team gets a foul committed against them and the refs miss the call, you're pissed for the entire next week, or in a Super Bowl situation, the entire offseason. And I think that's kind of what sometimes when things are down to human choice and human decision, it's hard to make it consistent every week. They'll try their best, but when it comes to safety, one person's not going to be like, "Oh, let me see how this plays out," when they know that their decision could cost somebody an injury or their life. Worst case scenario.
So, the rest of kind of skip to the end of the race because we had to explain this rule because it dovetailed into the duels, but I guess we could work our way from the end to the front. So I mean,
the end's the important part anyway.
Yeah, William Byron won again, back to back. Surprise! I was surprised.
You consider he was in like sixth.
Yeah, but there was a lot of stuff that led up to why he ended up being in that position to win. So overall, I thought it was a good race, other than the huge long rain delay that was annoying. Once they got going, it was good. It is kind of annoying that a lot of these are coming down to fuel strategy for some of the time.
And super speedway races, especially.
A lot of the race. Yeah, and a lot of the race will be kind of not as fast until they have a caution, and then they're not concerned, and they can refuel, and they're not concerned.
Well, tires
have no bearing on this race.
No, they haven't for a long time. There was a manufactured caution, like with 40 laps left, so everybody could come in and get fuel, so they wouldn't have to
debris.
Yeah, but that was slightly questionable. They never showed any debris in the track. It was probably a manufactured caution, so they can get the cars into the pits, get them all filled up, so they wouldn't have to worry about fuel to the end of the race. I think that was a entertainment call, which is also a questionable decision, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, who's doing race manipulation, right?
Yeah, if NASCAR is manipulating the whole race, then I guess we gotta let it slide.
Because
who watches the Watchmen?
Yeah, because we've talked about this before. Because that all comes down to there's so much sports betting. Like people can manipulate stuff. So
sure. There's sketchy, but there's sketchy stuff that happens during the race sometimes, for sure. And again, just like any sport, because the same thing can happen again.
Rules and sports, pretty interesting. Trying to figure it out and how to make the right calls.
Nope. I'm glad it's not me making the call. I'm glad it's just me sitting on my couch and complaining about calls I don't like.
Yeah, it's more fun to argue about them on the Monday morning after. So,
100%.
But anyway, yeah, I was talking about how the race kind of started off as a fuel mileage race, and then a couple things happened. I think the first real big wreck was so Penske cars are very, very fast, and the Fords were very, very fast. And you had the three, well, I'm getting ahead of myself here because early on in the race, some of the Toyotas drove out to the front, and I know Bubba Wallace led some laps. And then it really felt like the Fords hit their stride, and Logano got out there pretty early on and was leading the race. He had a very fast car. And they were talking about there was a plastic bag in his front spoiler.
Clearly the fastest car of the day was
Yeah.
Logano.
Yeah. Some of the Hendrick cars were pretty fast early on. I think Elliott was out there. But yeah, it was interesting. They were talking about how there's a plastic bag stuck to the front of Logano's car. And then at some point it disappeared. And I don't think anybody kind of noticed it. And there was something happened. I don't know why they were on a restart. Was it
water again? I don't remember. There was something stupid happened.
Yeah, maybe. There's something happened. Either it was debris or they did have a little rain break. Regardless what happened, when they went to do the restart, Logano's on the outside row in first. The car absolutely did not fire off. And he checked up and it just rippled down the pack. And it took out namely, it took out Chastain, who then got turned and drove right into the side of Helio. So both Trackhouse cars done. So that kind of sucked. I forget who else it took out. It took out a few pretty fast cars.
John Hunter Nemechek turned into the side of Chastain, and then Chastain turned into the side of Helio. So
yeah, it was just like a weird accordion thing. And then, you could hear it. Logano's car was not running right. It was like missing. They came down to the pits, which is impressive, and like tried figuring it out, and like swapped an ECU really fast, and also swapped the throttle body, and then come to find out, part of the plastic bag was stuck in the throttle body. But they swapped that throttle body in 80 seconds or something. Insane.
Yeah, you only lost one lap. Yeah.
Like, how is it even attached that they could do it that fast? So
it's got to be one big bolt in the middle, like an old carburetor.
Yeah. So he ended up he had the lucky dog spot, so that worked out for him. I mean, the guy was like blessed. I don't know. And he
it was his race to lose. Spoiler alert, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, he drove that thing right back up to the front. Incredibly. And then got into the back of Ricky Stenhouse, who threw a big block item. That caused another huge wreck. Took out a bunch of cars. This was like 20 laps to go, I think. So then, and this was after like many, many laps of just the Penske cars, just nose to tail, just controlling the race. And you're like, oh, this is going to be like a Penske 1-2-3 or something, which would have been annoying. But I guess it wouldn't be a Hendrick win. So then that set up, all of a sudden, that reshuffled the field. The Toyotas were back out front. And you had Cindric out there with no help because Logano got taken out and Blaney got taken out.
Cindric's in a Ford, so.
Penske Ford, yep. So his two Penske teammates were gone, which the Penske cars usually run really tight together. What was interesting to me, there was a lot of three wide racing and watching that top row kind of fall back and the bottom row and the middle row doing a lot better. And this is where I think people don't, like, when you're just kind of watching NASCAR, you're like, the cars just go around in circles. This is so boring. And then when you really start to get into it, you start to learn like what they're actually doing at a super speedway. Like, there's more than just driving around in the circle. There's a lot of aero play going on. And I will hand it to Harvick and Clint Boyer. Actually did a better job this year of like explaining what was going on. Or at least Kevin Harvick did, because he's most recently driven a 7th gen car.
Clint Boyer still sounds like a big dummy.
Yeah, but explaining, especially, so towards the end, it was definitely Hamlin's race to lose. Like, he definitely had the advantage over Cindric without having a teammate up there. And it was interesting to watch him intentionally push Cindric out front with Reddick behind him. So Hamlin's pushing Reddick Hamlin is pushing Cindric and Reddick is right behind him. Pushed him out front to get him away from the pack and then pulled back to take away that aero advantage he had, and then was able to pass him on the outside. Like, that was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, because he uses their two cars together in a draft to go faster. Get him up front, slow down, hook up with another Toyota, and then use the two Toyotas as an advantage to be going faster than Cindric, who's out front all by himself. Yeah. And Hamlin and Cindric have a long history of like very good, respectful racing with each other. So that was fun to watch.
Yeah. I like Cindric. Cindric's a good racer.
100%.
And, he even had a good, he was a real good sport about the weird the second duel ending there. I think he felt generally bad because Eric Jones didn't win.
Yeah, because Cindric is a more successful overall driver than Eric Jones is. So it would have been good to give Eric Jones a win like that, because it's not a season win. It wouldn't have affected Cindric that much.
And you get like $50,000 or something for the duels. But anyway,
yeah, back
to the 500. There was so much aero stuff going on that once you actually realize what's going on, that makes it a really interesting race. It's just something you need to pay attention to. And once you start realizing what's happening, it makes the racing much more interesting, where, guys are pulling up alongside somebody else to side draft them and slow them down.
Yep.
And then
slow their opponent down and then go by them.
Yep. Because that was what was happened towards the end of the race. For whatever reason, the Toyotas could not take a good push from a Ford.
Yeah, the shape of the back of the Toyota and the front of the Ford didn't mesh very well at a super speedway, and a Ford would get up behind. So I think it was when Cindric was behind. Yeah, Christopher Bell was behind Hamlin, and he would be in the bumper, and you could just see Hamlin's car just dancing down the racetrack, like wanting to change ends for sure.
But and then so now there's a they're on the last lap and Hamlin's out front. You're like, well, maybe he's gonna get it. Here comes what's his name, Cole Custer.
Yeah.
Say, oh no, I want it too, and cause a huge wreck. Basically in the trial again, I think.
Yeah, for
going into it. And suddenly all like the first top 5 cars just got taken out.
Yep.
And out of nowhere comes the 24 driving through with Reddick chasing him, and William Byron won the Daytona 500.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I was like...
And Cole Custer, in all of his impatience, finished 21st. Yeah.
It's brutal.
That's strictly an inexperienced race at that point. Like, he was just at the front of the Daytona 500, thought he could win, didn't have the patience to do it right, and just tried to stuff his car out through the front of the pack. So,
yeah. Well, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting season.
Yes, it is.
I was really hoping you were hoping. I didn't want to see a Penske or a Hendrick car win, and here we are.
Yeah, it's okay. It's only one race. Plenty of races to go. Plenty of races for the. It's hard to even say independent team because they're all huge money teams, but the lesser moneyed teams. Not that they're even lesser money, just the newer teams, the less. I don't even know how to say it. They're all. There's no independent team. There's no
non-legacy teams.
Yeah, there's no garage effort team out here anymore, unfortunately. Even the most garage effort teams are legacy teams, like Legacy Motor Club, which is basically Richard Petty, or Wood Brothers Racing's been around since the 60s. Those are the biggest, like the most independent teams. So, and even they have help from legacy teams too. So,
well, Jimmy Johnson got third.
Yeah, which is
Right place, right
Good
time
for him. Yeah, good for him. Right place, right time for everybody. I mean, the 24 wouldn't have won the race. It was.
It was even close.
Yeah.
He was kind of fast for a little while, but he wasn't, not towards the end. It was really Logano's race to win, and he just, I don't know, got caught up in a wreck, and that's the way it goes.
He also got impatient. He was trying to get to the front of the pack before the end of the race, and he still had 22 laps to go. What's his number? Sorry, 22. 20 laps to go, or 25 laps to go, or something. Whatever.
He would have got up there eventually. He had 2 Penske cars up there, so
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Marco would have been excited.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the next race, they're right back. They're going to Atlanta already. So that's a mile and a half. It's a fast track.
Atlanta's a good one.
Yeah, it will be. Oh, we didn't talk about Ryan Preece going airborne again.
Again, poor kid.
My God. I mean, so I think we talked about, so when we went to the Rolex, I don't believe they had paved the rear straight yet.
They had, because they paved it.
His
big wreck was in 23, and they paved it after that. So for Daytona in 24, it was paved because he had a huge wreck in 23 where he spun and hit the grass and flipped multiple times.
Barrel rolls.
Yeah.
So, they made a big deal about it during the Rolex. Yeah, it makes the track a little less nice to look at, but there was a big wreck during this Daytona 500 that a bunch of cars spun down through that backstretch, and there wasn't any grass for them to hit, so none of them went airborne. So like, oh, cool, that win, that works. Too. Yeah, it's like good, that worked. And then Ryan Preece was like, hold on,
yeah.
So I don't even remember which wreck that was, but it was just such a crazy wreck, and going into like turn 3. And somehow the front of the car got bounced. I think as it came down the apron, it kind of bounced up. He didn't seem to drive up the car that was under him.
No, from the first angle, you thought that they hit tire to tire, but when they showed the other angle, the cars weren't even touching.
Nope. And it just, the way it came up, it just never deployed the roof flaps. It just wasn't in the right angle. And he just went over like that flat bottom.
He didn't just go over. He flew what looked like a wheelie down the stretch for a solid couple 100 feet, and then he went over.
Yeah.
Poor
and
guy.
Then luckily
hit all 4 wheels in the ground ever.
Yeah, luckily hit the safer barrier with the back corner and not like the roof or something.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy, but yeah, they got to figure that out. That's a little crazy.
It's wild. Well, I mean, half the reason that the cars are so closely matched now is because they have such an aero package on them to create a ton of drag, because they were, doing 200 plus miles an hour and they wanted to slow them down, and they were winding up on their roof. So they did all this stuff to stop from coming on their roof. And it still seems like every year a car winds up on its roof. It's like you can't outrun physics, right? No matter how much you try, something can happen. You're driving a car with 4 wheels at just shy of 200 miles an hour. Things happen, short of putting more downforce in it and slowing them down even more, and therefore making the racing boring. There's not much you can do.
I mean, it's interesting because even with, it turned towards the passenger side, the car's got a slab side. I think the window had stayed in it at that point, because they do run a passenger window on super speedways, I think, to keep air out of the inside for lift and aerodynamics. Unless that window, maybe they'll figure out if that window popped out and the air went onto the inside of the car and kind of caught it like a parachute and lifted it up.
At some point, the window was out, because when the car crash is done, the window's lying on the ground next to it.
Yeah. So maybe.
But it's also the flat bottom on the car. You get enough air underneath a flat bottom car. And this goes back to Le Mans cars in 98, right? With the Porsche and the Mercedes crashes. You get enough air under a flat bottom car and it turns it into a wing, and wings want to fly. So there's just only so much you can do to mitigate it because the bottom of the car is the entire surface area of the car, and try as you might with a couple of 3-foot roof flaps, they're not going to have the same surface area, and there's going to be a time where that entire flat bottom overcomes what the roof flaps are doing. And listen, the roof flaps are certainly effective. They mitigate the damage a lot. They keep the cars on the ground a lot. There'd be a lot more cars in their roof otherwise. But there's
Well,
just,
they
I think
even
there's
added.
sometimes you can't help it.
Well, even that tail flap that comes down when the roof flaps
So
go
it comes
up.
down. Yep. But
Well, that's what I'm saying.
unfortunately-
If as he went sideways, the sides of these cars are like a slab, so it's got a big arrow that's kind of like a sail itself. If that window had popped out and suddenly it picks up air inside the roof of the car and picks it up like a parachute, it's going to tip the car, and as it tips, then it catches underneath the flat bottom, and it's just like going to keep going, just cascading failure,
yeah,
flipping
I don't
over.
know, but all I know is poor Iron Priest.
Yeah.
Can't keep a car
I
on the
mean,
ground.
watching it happen, I was like, no, like, please, like, I really
Through no fault of his
don't want
own
to see a
either.
guy. Yeah, but I was like, I really don't want to watch a guy die on TV here.
No, we saw that 1 year already. I need to see it again.
Yeah.
So
It was 24 years ago. It's crazy.
yeah, a long time ago. Wild. Anyway, cool. Good racing. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to the rest of the season. Looking forward to all the racing this season, all the different series.
Yeah, racing's back.
Watch as much as I can.
I did not watch any of the recaps of Rally Sweden, so I'll have to go back and do that. I just didn't have a chance yet.
Likewise.
But all right.
Couldn't even tell you who won.
We got racing. We talked Project Car updates earlier. In the other half that we recorded last week, I really didn't have any updates to that. I still haven't gone to the machine shop. I gotta go pick up that engine. Did you have any Scale Autocast stuff you want to talk about before we finish up?
Sure, if you want to finish up real fast. I finished the Tamiya Grasshopper 2, and I finally put a battery
Nice.
pack in it. Yeah.
Cool.
Straight nostalgia hit.
Yeah.
Immediately
I
felt like I was 8 years old again.
Yeah, I never had a buggy. I had other stuff, and then I built that to my buggy, and I was like, wow, these are really fun. Like,
Yeah.
I get it.
It's funny, using it as an adult, I was driving it around, and it bounces
Mhm.
around a lot because it doesn't have oil-filled shocks.
Mhm.
It just has, spring-over control arms.
Yeah, friction shocks.
And yeah, it's difficult to control because it bounces a lot. So that immediately I
Yeah.
was like, I'm going to go get oil-filled shocks for this because they make a conversion kit for them and do this and do that. And then I stopped myself.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave this as it is, as strictly a nostalgia piece.
Exactly.
Keep it stock, enjoy it, drive it for what it is, enjoy it for what it is, not make any major upgrades to it. Just enjoy it. I might put a bigger motor in it because it comes with the smaller can motor, the 380 versus the 540. But even then, driving it around my yard, it doesn't have a ton of top speed, but it's got plenty of torque that it spins the tires and does donuts, which is all you really want for a backyard toy RC car, right? So it was a good time.
I mean, realistically, a modern Tamiya buggy is not very expensive. That has like oil fill shocks.
That's
if you
why
really
I
want-
decided against it.
Yeah,
I started
you can
looking
buy
at the
another-
upgrades, and next thing I know, I was going to be like $100 in upgrades. I was like, or I could just buy a $160 kit that's a whole different buggy that comes with all these parts, and
Yeah.
then I have a cool one that runs really good and one that's just nostalgia fun that maybe I can let the kids use when they're over.
Yeah.
Like, so
Well,
it's
the
probably
new
what
one-
I'm doing.
You can actually use the new one. You can actually bash with the new one.
Yeah.
and keep the other one. Keep the other one for the shelf. So
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I fully enjoyed ripping it around the yard, and like I said, it was a straight nostalgia hit. Like immediately, I was 8 years old again. I think I threw all my laundry on the floor right afterwards just to
nice.
complete the No, it was really neat, and I look forward to. I want to take it to like a big field somewhere where you have some big open parks here I can run around and kind of just enjoy it. Because the other thing is, even though it's exactly the same as the one I had when I was 8 or 9 years old, the electronics that they were around back then don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It was a mechanical speed control back then, and a couple other things that were different. And just having modern electronics in it makes it so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like the modern electronics are so good. Like a $20 stick pack battery lasted me. I haven't even killed it yet. I was running it for probably a half hour.
Yeah.
With the more efficient electronics, the more efficient speed controls, the speed control that took me some getting used to because I never had a speed control that had brakes on a
Yes.
faster RC car before. So it
Yep.
doesn't go reverse to forward. The first time you hit reverse, it actually applies like a brake to the motor, which is
Yep.
cool. Which took some getting used to, but just those modern electronics are so much more efficient and so much better than they used to be. Even the steering servo is so much faster, and everything just works better.
So far, I've built 3 newer Tamiya kits or re-releases of older Tamiya kits.
Yeah,
They've all come with that Hobby Wing ESC.
there's no reason
why
to
would I
upgrade
buy?
it. Yeah.
Why would I buy anything else unless if I'm just gonna run a brushed motor, there's no reason to run anything else. And that's
Yeah, you'd
like
have to
there's
upgrade to do brushless, but whatever.
yeah, and there's like there's extreme value there in those Tamiya kits that they come with that nice ESC
Yep.
and a motor.
Well, I think they do that because they used to always come with a mechanical speed control.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one thing you never had to buy when you bought a Tamiya kit. You always had to buy a radio, a receiver, and a servo, but nothing else.
Yeah.
So it looks like they kind of do that now just to have the same kind of feeling when you buy a new RC car from them. That's just you got to buy a radio and a receiver, a battery. And with these new radios, like you don't even need to buy multiple receivers and radios. Like one radio has memory in it for multiple models. So
Exactly.
even the radio I have, I bought a super cheap, I can't even think of the name of it, FlySky, FLYSKY. It's a 3-channel radio, a 10 model memory. It came with a receiver, and I think it was like $40. And additional receivers are $9 each. And I was nervous about it, but I bought it to run a crawler with, so I didn't need something that was, super long distance and fast, but it works fine. And then looking online, people have very good reviews of these FlySky controllers, just for a $40 radio. So the hobby is way cheaper than it used to be and way better than it used to be.
Yeah.
But enjoyable. Very enjoyable. I will be building another. Got to decide what I want to build next. I kind of want to build a bunch of the ones that I wanted as a kid but never bought because it wasn't in the budget of an 8-year-old to buy multiple kits.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, I want a Blackfoot and I want what's the big monster truck? I want a Clodbuster.
Oh, I want a Clodbuster really badly. I
always
not
wanted a
sure they make them
Clodbuster.
currently.
They make them right now. They make them.
Oh, do they? Yeah.
Well, 100%.
They're a little ridiculous.
Don't worry about it. They're not that expensive. I remember them being like $300 to $400 when I was a child, and they are less than that now.
Yeah.
So, kind of want a Clodbuster. That was like my dream kit as a kid. The Clodbuster and the Toyota pickup was the Bruiser, maybe they called it.
Yeah, the 3-speed transmission.
Yep.
I think that's
both of which are still
currently
available.
Oh, they are?
Oh,
Okay.
Yep. Oh, yep. I think it is, unless I misunderstood. I thought it was, but I think that one costs more money. But
I want to get another one of the buggies that are a little bit newer than the Wild one. That's more like a modern looking buggy, but
sure, yeah,
maybe next summer.
Yeah, well, whatever. They look cool hanging on the wall in the garage too, I think. So
yeah,
I'll maybe get rid of some of these Hot Wheels cars and some model kits and make room for some more RC stuff.
Could do that.
Totally in.
Well,
That's all I know.
I worked on the Element
Totally in.
Neutron kit here. I shortened the wheelbase to 313 with the updated links. And maybe did I talk about this? Or maybe I talked about it with you off podcast. But yeah, so next up, I got to throw ball bearings in it and mount the body. So that's what I'm working on. I found those magnet adapters that go on the end of the body posts. So they're like $11 on Amazon.
Yep.
So
You just got to trim the body post to the right height.
Yes. Yeah. I'll get it all set up and then put magnets inside the ABS body and stick it on there. I feel like we talked about this.
Yep.
But typical. I did put some stuff in Scale Autocast. So
as did I.
You should go on there and look at it. What's that?
I said, as did I.
Yeah. You put your actual RC car, and I put 1/6 Tomica models of Tamiya RC cars. It feels so
1/6 of 1/10.
Yes. So those are on there. Pretty cool. I got some other stuff I could put up there. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think it's a wrap.
I think it's a wrap. You should come hang out in the Discord because there's tons of stuff going on there. Tons of car stuff. Always talk about stuff like that. Pictures of RC cars, modern cars. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Music talk, food talk. So, Auto Off Topic podcast on Facebook, Auto Off Topic on Instagram, and I'm Racing Thinker on Instagram. Also over there in Threads, we've got Scale Autocast on Instagram and Threads. And Brad, where can they find you?
They can find me on all those places you said, plus my Instagram is TSISS350.
All right, cool. As always, keep cars analog and aim for the roses.